What is one rule that was implemented at your school or work that backfired horribly? Story 1. I formerly worked for a production business that had several highly qualified award-winning editors on staff. There were directors, executives, and producers, but the editors were the actual moneymakers and the ones who truly built the business. So they were really the hub of the business. The editors would often dine in their offices while doing their duties, with food being ordered by the executives every time. The bosses agreed to remove paid meals one day in order to save money. The editors all agreed that this was a bad idea, so they would occasionally leave for lunch and return after 3 hours. Really, the corporation was powerless because these editors were at the top of their game. Additionally, Warner Brothers may decide to depart if they learn that the editor they had always employed has quit. As a result, the corporation was powerless. They lost around 4 hours per person per day, while saving maybe $15 per person per day. When cutting expenses, you should eliminate items that are the most costly and provide the least obvious advantage. So it stands to reason that creature comforts, which are essentially free and significantly improve quality of life, are always the first item to go. I'm always in awe of how many businesses there are. Cutting shortcuts and trying to save money may seem wise to businesses, but they are unaware of the full cost of their decisions. By reducing paid meals, they may save a little money, but they don't take into account how it would affect the morale and output of their staff. And in this instance, they really lost hours of labor per employee every day, which is a significant loss in the big picture. Story 2. A brief introduction. My high school was a little rural institution. At the start of the second semester of my senior year, 600 students in grades 7 through 12 were chosen at random. We were no longer permitted to carry backpacks or book bags in the hallways between classrooms, according to the new principal, who had just relocated here from an inner-city school in another state for safety concerns. It makes sense in the modern era. However, the kids were irate about this sudden shift in the routine of our little school. Shenanigans followed the implementation of this new regulation, including every student simultaneously dumping their books in the corridor at 10:51. My personal favorite was the student in my class who made a backpack-like object out of nothing. He began by gathering many belts and tying his books together so that he could carry them on his back. After the second day, that was shut down. It then became comical. The next Monday, he enters wearing something that he designed. He then proceeded to attach his books to these leg brace shelves by constructing L-shaped shelves out of wood that could be linked to the sides of his legs. He was obviously removed from class before lunch. Sir, my patent pending leg shelves are not a backpack. Oh my goodness, the narrative is funny. People are very inventive when they are furious about something. I could nearly hear the sound of the hallway shaking as all the students simultaneously dropped their books, and the individual with elf-like legs. Pure brilliance. This incident just serves to demonstrate how laws and regulations don't always function as planned, and sometimes individuals will take extraordinary measures to avoid them. Story 3. Because the class before us had gone a bit out of hand, my high school was attempting to stop a senior prank. In essence, they advised against having one, warning that they would get anybody caught doing anything into serious trouble. Someone then proposed the notion of pulling an anti-prank. Everyone was aware of the plan since it had been discussed in the hallways for a whole week. For a senior prank, each senior was going to bring a potentially dangerous object and do nothing with it. On Monday of that week, almost every senior in the class brings a banana to every session. About 2,600 kids attend this institution, with 650 graduating this year. So many bananas are being carted through the hallway. Assistant principals and teachers are in a panic. By midday, it was announced that all bananas had to be consumed, disposed of, or else they would be seized. So by that afternoon, the student had lost access to every fruit. The following day was even more pleasant. We should everyone bring a gallon bottle of water to class, according to someone. And once again, nobody was surprised. They have announced that they will begin removing the water jugs out of concern about what we would do to them. The pupils started to express themselves now. At this point, people are bitter and unwilling to give up their priceless water. Ingenious students are putting them in backpacks and evading teachers in the hall. Anything necessary to protect their water jugs. Sadly, the majority of the medicines had already been seized. Students then begin using social media. Local news stations are receiving several tweets and mentions. You name it. TMZ, Oprah, Allen. They were all referenced. All of these communications warn that schools are seizing all water and forbidding pupils from drinking it. 2x hashtag for the high school drought. The end is near. Can accent help you complete the task before the day is over? At our school, there were 2 separate news reporters. Yes, we finally got the last laugh after failing to read our textbooks and making ridiculous regulations to prevent us from doing a senior prank. Because of our practical joke, their rules were broken. There's been a lot of bad news despite no harmful activity. This is funny, dude. It's always exciting to watch individuals come up with original methods to challenge authority, and the fact that almost the whole senior class participated makes it even more exciting. Additionally, it is absurd that they attempted to seize all of the water containers. The kids' use of social media to draw attention to their cause has to be the greatest part, however, who hasn't attempted to engage Oprah in their high school antics after all? Overall, this tale is an excellent illustration of how to make a bad circumstance humorous. Story 4. We got a new manager for our office. She was an outside hire and was trying to prove herself quickly, and she was obsessed with efficiency. So her first week here, she sent out this very rudely worded email about employees eating at our desks. We have a very small break area for tables, and we have about 300 employees here, and that we all had to stop eating at our desks because it was not efficient to eat and try to work at the same time through a coordinated effort by some of the more sassy people at the office. They all had their lunches at the same time and filled the break room with about 90 people, elbow to elbow, and they all ate standing up literally the next day after that happened. She sent out a follow-up email saying that we could eat at our desks, but she advised us to take a break from our work from time to time. It was pretty funny. Story 5. In my dorm, if you did something that triggered the smoke fire alarm, you had to do a safety presentation for everyone on your floor. This was intended to deter pranksters from pulling the alarm. A guy on our floor was making grilled cheese in the kitchenette and burned it, which legitimately triggered the fire alarm. Afterwards, he explained, assuming that since it had been a legitimate alarm and not a prank, that he wouldn't have to do a presentation. He was, of course, wrong. So the next Wednesday night, the entire floor assembled, and we were treated to a 30-minute safety presentation on the dangers of grilled cheese sandwiches. It contained literally nothing about fire safety. It was all choking hazards and cholesterol. Our RA was furious, but the student pointed out that the write-up that he'd been given just said safety presentation. We didn't get any more presentations after that. Oh, boy. The dangers of grilled cheese sandwiches? Who knew? I mean, I knew they were delicious, but I had no idea they were such a threat to our safety. I could just imagine the poor guy standing in front of everyone sweating bullets as he tries to come up with enough material to fill a 30-minute presentation. Well, you see, the cheese can get all gooey and stick to the roof of your mouth, and then you might choke on it. I guess that's one way to get out of doing something you really don't want to do. Story 6. Our school made it so you couldn't play dodgeball anymore. So what happened was that the gym teachers came up with this new game called Fireball. The rules are, there are balls in the middle of the gym. People go on 2 separate teams, and if you get hit, you're out. If you catch a ball, Okay, so it was basically dodgeball. Then Fireball was banned. So now there's this new game called Pinball, which isn't involving the machines, unfortunately, but it's basically dodgeball or Fireball. But there's bowling pins that need to be knocked over as well. I think they just gave up after a while. 8+ gym teachers, though. Story 7. Zero tolerance, which means if you are involved with fighting, you will be kicked out, no questions asked. They think it would mean no more fighting. No pay! It means if the bully is beating up a kid, no one would step in for fear of getting involved with a fight and getting kicked out. No one would snitch because it means the bully will target you next. And now you are involved in fighting and get kicked out. It's a dumb policy. I completely agree with you that zero tolerance policies for fighting can have unintended consequences. While the policy may seem like a good idea on the surface, it can actually lead to a more unsafe environment where bullies are free to do as they please without fear of repercussions. We should strive to create an environment where students feel safe to report bullying and violence without fear of retaliation. Story 8. If you violated the dress code policy, you had to wear these really big gray sweatpants or sweatshirts that said DCV. In big orange letters, dress code violation. It became a thing to get caught because they were apparently really comfortable. When the admin finally caught on that people were trying to get them on purpose, they changed it so that you got in. School suspension. Jokes on them for that, too. Lots of kids preferred that over being in class. Story 9. A school in my area jacked up the cost of the parking pass. People protested by not buying the pass. Instead, they rode the bus. Funny thing is, the county really relies on juniors and seniors driving because they don't have enough buses for all the students. The parking pass fee dropped. People drove again. Don't ever let them tell you, driving to school is a privilege. They need you to drive to school. Story 10. Overtime is paid in free time instead of money. 3 people quit so far. More people planning to. No new hires to be found. It's probably just a matter of time before this shop closes down. Story 11. My high school had a really bad problem with students showing up to class 5 minutes late every day, so they tried 3 different solutions. First, they stopped letting us use lockers. They quickly found out that just meant that nobody brought their books to class. Next, they decided to ban use of the restrooms between class periods. Teachers started complaining about everyone asking for a bathroom pass as soon as class started, so that was abandoned after a week or so. Lastly, one week they made a ton of announcements Monday through Wednesday that all students were to be on time for class. Then on Thursday, they suspended any student who was late for insubordination. Turns out that included half the football team. This occurred right before the biggest game of the year in a town of 4,000 people. This game attracts about 16,000. So yeah, they gave up on that as well. Sounds like someone in the high school administration department was really determined to tackle the issue of students showing up late for class. But as the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And in this case, the road led them straight to 3 failed attempts at solving the problem. Morale of the story. Sometimes it's better to just let things be. Especially when it comes to teenagers and their innate ability to rebel against authority. Story 12. My father participated in high desert training in the Mojave as a corpsman with the Marines. They had a serious issue with unknown snake bites. In other words, people would be bitten but not know what snake it was. So it was challenging to discover the proper remedy. In order to identify the snake that bit you, bring it back here, my father said the Marines after gathering them all in a room. Not even a full week later, they had to slightly change the language when a Marine opted to bring back a rattlesnake without killing it after being bitten. The snake decided to express his displeasure at being transported all the way back to base alive by repeatedly biting the man's arm the whole trip. That Marine obviously returned home, and they made sure to call another meeting where they instructed everyone to kill the snake and bring it back. Goodness gracious. What a bizarre tale. That requires a lot of bravery, or maybe just a lack of common sense, given that the snake was still attacking him the whole time. That must have hurt terribly. It's a good thing they met and made sure everyone understood that the snake needed to be killed before being brought back. Story 13. No jogging during the break. It was created when a 2nd grader fell while running. Therefore, they prohibited running for all K-5 grades for any cause. Everyone should be aware that if you ask a child between the ages of 5 and 10, they will do the opposite of what you want them to do. Through addition to exercising outdoors, kids began sprinting through the hallways, cafeteria, and classrooms. After a week, neither the instructor nor the class cared anymore. Story 14. I attended an elementary private school where there were rigorous dress codes. You had to go to the principal's office without a belt, and he would make you use a shoestring. Everyone thought it was extremely cool when he opened the drawer to find like 6 different colors. As a result, a number of children briefly skipped their belts in order to wear their lime green shoestring belts to school. Story 15. The couch in the break room was removed by the new management in order to prevent individuals from taking naps during the hour. Long lunch break. No one took use of the option, but it was helpful to have it available on a trying day. Stoners began to sleep in various areas, such as in the warehouse and in between walls. At that point, we began having trouble finding him since he would fall asleep more deeply and was less likely to be awakened. His employment was not lost. Somehow, it was difficult to hire there. It seems that the new manager's attempts to stop workers from taking naps while at work didn't entirely go as planned. Salutations to the stoner. He came up with several inventive ways to continue his napping schedule. When a corporation eliminates little benefits that make the working more bearable, it's always a shame. I believe that a compromise, such as the establishment of a designated rest place, should have been made. Story 16. Follow your boss's instructions only. A write-up or termination will follow any departure from this. After an incident in the workplace, top management issued this instruction, which was extremely literal. Our crew alone consisted of 20 persons, and our work is quite fluid. Naturally, productivity fell to unjustified lows. Story 17. In a prior position, I was a programmer. The quantity of feature requests that each team and its developers accomplished served as their yardstick. We worked out how to break everything down into as many different feature requests as we could. A fresh report could be requested by a management. For the create button, making the button blue, making the button react when clicked, implementing business logic, displaying results in a grid, allowing grid sorting, and other features. We would build up individual feature requests. A 24-hour job would be broken up into 21-hour tasks. The top brass adored it. Despite purposefully slowing ourselves down with red tape, our team seemed to be 20 times more productive. Story 18. After a football was booted through a window during lunch, my school outlawed any balls larger than a few inches in diameter. A ready supply of golf balls was available to us since the majority of us who went home passed via the golf course's woods. Due of their size, golf balls were permitted under the new regulations. They weren't till 3 shattered windows and 1 lunch break. Story 19. Although it wasn't a school-wide rule, I had a particularly witchy French teacher who was often giving detentions for little offenses like going to the trash can to throw away a piece of paper. She was unable to handle the possibility that we sometimes would have to get up from our seats for quite legitimate reasons. Nobody would allow her back in when she accidentally locked herself out of the classroom one day. We're sorry, but we can't leave our seats. The janitor had to be brought in. Maintaining order and discipline in the classroom is one thing, but when you start giving detentions for offenses as minor as tossing away a piece of paper, things have gone too far. When this French teacher locked herself out of the classroom and no one would allow her back in, I'm pleased she got a taste of her own medicine. Story 20. My employer's drinking policy stipulates that you should abstain from alcohol for at least 4 hours prior to reporting to work. Engineers were all out drinking beers when they were contacted about production issues over the weekend, but they could arrive in 4 to 5 hours. Absolutely no alcohol was allowed on the property of my employer, not even for picnics or celebrations. After just a few weeks, everything came to an end when some workers insisted that the almost weekly cocktail parties for the directors and significant managers be alcohol-free as well. They could also report them. Story 21. My freshman year of high school, there was a regulation in place that said that if you came late, that is, after the first bell, the parking lot was inaccessible for parking. You would have to park at the gas station across the street and walk to school, which would cause you to be even later. After around 20, it ceased. People deliberately arrived late to school and then dispersed in large numbers down the roadway. In addition to the many parent complaints, I fail to see the reasoning behind such regulations. Oh, you're running late for class. So, as a kind of punishment, let's have you go through more hoops and be even later. The only effect of this is that latecomers will just depart, rather than handling it. It's upsetting to see regulations placed in place that really appear to make life worse for kids. This rule's goal of encouraging students to come on time seems sense, yet it appears to have had the opposite effect. I'm glad to hear that this regulation was finally changed, and I hope the school was able to come up with a better solution to the tardy problem. Story 22. Work wanted everyone to come in, even if they were ill, so my manager could check to see whether I was working or not. Notes from doctors are not allowed since they can be false. Vomited over vital documents on his desk. No remorse. Story 23. We now had to get permission in order to use the toilet during lunch as a result of a new regulation. We all worked together to raise hands simultaneously to indicate departure from the cafe. We received their reply by being sent 2 at a time. We followed this approach for a few days before changing it for everyone. Just get up right now and leaving without asking permission. The regulation wasn't ever formally abandoned, but over time the lunchroom instructors just ceased enforcing it. Story 24. After the third instance of being late, my high school instituted a policy requiring detention. The absence policy was left alone. While tardiness fell by 52, absences rose by 83. Ended up until social services intervened, there was no penalty for being absent